Hello all, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today video, we will see how we can secure our application on AKS. So I will show you how we can set up automatic SSL with Let's Encrypt and Azure Application Gateway Ingress Controller. So there are some prerequisite which is required to set up. So Azure related prerequisite we have, like you should have Azure subscription with proper permission so you can create the resources. Second, you should have AKS cluster deployed. Next, we have application gateway version 2 SKU, which is required for Ingress controller. So if you are, at least you should use a standard tier or a premium tier to get an advantage of Ingress controller feature. Then you should have a domain name which is required, like which is basically helpful to access your application. So you should definitely have a public DNS name or domain name. It could be of any of the cloud provider. For example, here I'm going to use GoDaddy because we have to point the our application gateway ingress controller public IP to this particular domain. So this is required. Now, if you talk about tools and setup, so this is required to interact with your AKS cluster. So Azure CLI, kubectl, and Helm, which is required to install application gateway ingress controller. If you are using or if you are installing application gateway ingress controller, then there are two options which you can use. The very first is Helm. Second, you can go to Azure portal, and from there itself you can enable the application gateway ingress controller. Then you need certificate manager. Third, we have AKS and AGIC configurations. So it basically required to enable managed identity for application gateway ingress controller, and you can deploy application gateway using Helm as well. So you can ignore third part, but it is required because if you are using application gateway ingress controller from the Azure portal add-on, then it will automatically create a managed identity and it will assign. Now talk about Let's Encrypt and Certificate Manager. So the both the terms are different. Basically, we will discuss in coming slide. So to set up this, basically you have to install the certificate manager on AKS. Once you set up the ingress controller, then you have to configure the cluster issuer for Let's Encrypt. Then obviously you have to validate the DNS or HTTP challenges for certificate issuance. So this part also we will discuss in coming slides in detail. And then you will apply the certificate resources for SSL automation. Then fifth is DNS configuration, which is required because the one thing, if you are using DNS-01 challenge, then you have to add the TXT record in your GoDaddy account or basically under domain, DNS settings. And if you are using HTTP-01 challenge, then basically it is required for ingress routing. So these challenges also we will see in coming slides. Then finally is testing and validations. So let's understand Let's Encrypt and Certificate Manager. So basically Let's Encrypt provides free automated SSL certificate, and a certificate manager is a Kubernetes native tool that automate their issuance and renewal process basically. So these are the commands basically which you can use to install a certificate manager on AKS. And the certificate manager is deployed as a Kubernetes controller that automatically provision TLS certificate from Let's Encrypt and manage their life cycles. So certificate manager is a very important part to for your SSL setup. So these are the steps which you will follow to set up certificate manager. So first you have to add the Helm repositories, jet stack Helm repositories basically which maintain the certificate manager. So these two commands basically you have to run. Next you have to install the certificate manager. So this is the command basically which you will use, Helm install certificate manager, and rest of the things I'm not gonna I'm not gonna speak. and then you will verify the installation. So once you install the certificate manager and you run this particular command called kubectl get pods -n, which is the namespace here, and certificate manager, so you will see 3 pods running. It means you have successfully installed the certificate manager here. All these things we will do in a demo, so it will be more clear. Then let's talk about cluster issuer for Let's Encrypt basically. So a cluster issuer is a Kubernetes resources that define how certificates should be requested from an external certificate authority. So in our case, we are going to use Let's Encrypt. Maybe you are using any other certificate authority. So there is no issues basically. So anyways, you need a cluster issuer resources. So this is the sample ML file for cluster issuer basically. So the API version here is certificate-manager.io/versions, and kind is cluster issuer, and the metadata, then we have a specification. Then you can see the very interesting term here, ACME. So this also I will leave it for now. We will discuss in detail in coming slides. And if you see here server basically, so this is the Let's Encrypt repository URL, or I would say directory URL. Then here you have to specify your email ID, so you get a notifications for renewal. Then you have a private key secret reference, so basically it stores your account private key. And here we have a solvers, so here we have HTTP 01 challenge basically we are going to use. And then we have Ingress, and we are going to use application gateway ingress controller. So that's what we have to specify the class here. Once you basically run this ML file, and then you have to verify, like you will apply this ML file, which is kubectl apply -n. This is the name of this particular cluster issuer file name. Then you will run kubectl get cluster issuer, because this is deployed as a resources in AKS. And if you are getting something this response, so this is again the metadata name which you have specified here, so you can keep any name whatever you like. And if you see the status here is ready, or ready is true, it means the cluster issuer is successfully set up on your AKS cluster. If it is false, then obviously you have to troubleshoot. Now let's talk about ACME basically, because ACME play a major role here. So ACME, the full form here is Automatic Certificate Management Environment. So it's basically ACME is a protocol used by Let's Encrypt to automate SSL and TLS certificate issuance. When you request a certificate, Let's Encrypt needs to verify that you own or control the domain, and this is done using the ACME challenges. So if you can see here that there are 2 challenges basically which is mostly used. There are 3 challenges, but the third one I have not specified, which is called TLS-APN-01, which is like rarely used. So that's why I have not mentioned here. So the very first challenge here is HTTP-01 challenge, which is mostly used. So Let's Encrypt ask you to place a special file at this particular location, and it verifies the file via HTTP before issuing the certificate, and it works if your website is accessible over HTTP. So in backend basically what happens if you are using HTTP-01 challenge, so basically it creates a temporary pod to respond to the challenge. And if you are using DNS-01, so it is basically used if you want to create a like wildcard domain basically. So in that case, if you are using DNS-01 challenge, then you should add a TXT record in your GoReady or whatever the cloud provider, domain provider you are using. So if you need a if you have a requirement for a wildcard certificate, in that case you should use DNS-01 challenge. So this is what ACME basically does. Now there is a term called Ingress-Shim in certificate manager, which is also useful. It is good to know. So let's understand. So Ingress-Shim is a built-in controller in Certificate Manager that automatically create a certificate resources when it detects TLS annotation in an Ingress resources. Okay. So let me quickly go to my next slides, then I'll come back. So if you see here, the certificate-manager.io/cluster-issuer. So if you mention this particular annotation in your ML file, it means the oh, sorry let me go back, I forget. So whatever the ingress or whatever the certificate manager or the certificate basically which we are going to use, you should not create a manually. If it is not enabled, then you have to manually create a certificate resources. And if it is enabled by default, it enabled in your AKS Cluster certificate manager, then you should not create a certificate resources separately. It will automatically create a certificate resources and store in your secret basically, because whatever the annotation the TLS you have used here, this annotation you have used here, based on that it will automatically create a certificate for you. If you have not specified this annotation, in that case you have to manually go and create a certificate resources as well. But if we talk about a good practice or best practice, basically you should create a certificate resources manually, because you should have then more control on your certificate. So this is the secret name, if you can see a TLS hyphen secret. So basically certificate manager store the certificate in this secret, basically TLS hyphen secret. So we will do in a demo, then it will be more clear. So let me go back to my slide. Okay, so I have covered TLS ACME challenges. Okay, so everything I think I have covered in Ingress-Shim part. So this is enabled by default. If it is not enabled, then you can enable it. And apart from this, basically you should always create a certificate manually, but it is not recommended. And if you are doing a demo and all, you can go with that, like automatic certificate creation. Otherwise, so basically one step will be less, like you will not create a manual certificate. It will do a job for you. Like here basically everything like major role plays by the annotation which we use in your configuration files. So let's move to the demo, then we will see how we have to set up AKS cluster application gateway ingress controller. Then we will install a certificate manager, then we will set up a cluster issuer, then we will basically do a final testing. Okay, if our application is working with SSL certificate, and the certificate which it is using, that is coming from the Let's Encrypt itself. Okay, so now I'll go to my Azure portal. Let me log in it. So here what we will do, first we will create a Azure Kubernetes cluster with standard tier, and then we will enable application gateway ingress controller add-on on it. Okay, so let me go to my Kubernetes services. So I'll create a very simple Kubernetes cluster with all the default configurations. Actually, we can do all these things automated from using Terraform and Azure DevOps CI/CD pipeline as well. In case if you guys want a complete CI/CD pipeline on it, then ping me on comment. Then definitely I'll try to make a video on that. So here I'll choose my cluster name, and you can see in pricing tier we have to choose standard or premium, because if we use free tier, then we cannot use application gateway ingress controller add-on here. So I'll go with standard tier here, and rest all the fields I will keep it default. Now I'll change the settings of my node pools. So I don't want 2 to 5 counts. I'll put it minimum 1 to 2, and here I will choose the size as well. So here I'll go with D2SB3 because this is a demo, so we don't want higher configurations node pool. Let me update it. And one thing you have to keep in mind when you are using application gateway ingress controller add-on with Kubernetes cluster, then Azure CNI overlay won't support it. So either you have to choose Azure CNI node subnet or kubenet. So I'll go with Azure CNI node subnet. And if you have your own virtual network, you can bring that, otherwise it will create default. So I'm not going to, because I don't have any virtual network, so I'll leave it default. Rest all the fields I will keep it default. I don't want any monitoring here. Okay, so let me hit on create. So it will take couple of minutes to create a AKS cluster. Meantime, what I will do, I will resume the video. Once the cluster will be ready, I'll resume back. Okay, so our AKS cluster deployment is completed. Let me go to resources. So now what I will do, I will enable the application gateway ingress controller add-on here. So for that I'll go to settings and here in networking. So in networking you have to go to virtual network integration, and from here you can click on manage. Okay, let me click on save. So it will again take couple of minutes. Meantime, what we will do, I'll go through the YAML file which I have already created here. So let me go to my Visual Studio Code. So here I have 5 YAML files. So the very first file here we have to create a certificate. So the API version which we used for certificate manager, and the kind, obviously we need a certificate. Then under metadata we have to specify the name of our certificate. So in our case my-tls-certificate, and namespace here we are using default namespace. And if I'll go to specification here, so then we have to specify the secret name. So for example here I have given tls-secret, and then issuer reference, so name and kind. So and then DNS name. So whatever the DNS you are going to point to this particular certificate, that domain name you have to provide here. So this is very simple certificate.yaml file here, and I have already written the descriptions here as well. Now let me go to my deployment.yaml file. So here basically we are going to deploy Nginx application here. So API version is apps_b1, kind is deployment, metadata name of our application. And under specification I want only one replica of this particular application. If you want 2, 3, 4, like based on requirement you can change. Then we are using selector here. Then under templates, basically this define the how the pod should be created. So under metadata labels, then we have a name, like the pod name will be app equal to my-app, and again it will have some kind of random strings as well. And here is specification of container. So here we have to give a name of the container, so which is my app, and image. So I have not using any private repositories like Azure Container Registry. So in that case this image will be directly pulled from the Docker Hub. And the port for container so is port 80, because the default port for Nginx is port 80. And if I'll go to ingress.yaml file, so here the main role of annotations here. So here if you can see, this is the default annotation which we will use for application gateway ingress controller. And here this is this annotation basically used for let's encrypt. And here I am using the ACME challenge HTTP 01. So in that case, if you are using DNS1, then you have to specify a TXT record in your domain provider. But if you are using HTTP 01, then you don't need to create a TXT record on domain providers. And the duration, I want 90 days valid for the certificate validation is 90 days will be, and the renew before 15 days. So once it about to expire 15 days earlier, it will automatically renew the certificate. Then this is the backend rule, basically how our application will behave. Now let me go to let's encrypt -clusterissuer.ml file. So here API version will be certificate-manager.io/b1. This specify the certificate manager API basically, and the kind obviously cluster issuer, and metadata the name of the cluster issuer. So the name will be let's encrypt-prod. And under specification, then we have ACME challenge, and this is the server which is the let's encrypt production API URL, and the email address, whatever the email address you want to specify, you can specify. Basically this is because whenever you want any kind of notification, like if it is going to expire or if it is renewed, then you will get a notification over email, so you have to specify that one. Then provide private key secret reference here. So the name is let's encrypt pod, so the secret name is let's encrypt pod, which certificate manager automatically manage basically. And here we are using HTTP 01 and Ingress, because let's encrypt send a request to verify domain control, so we have to specify here our Ingress class as well. And then we have a service.ml file for our application. So here I'm using a cluster IP. If you want, you can use a node port as well, or load balancer service, but it is not required, because anyways we are going to expose our application through application gateway ingress controller. So these are the basic YAML files which I will add in a description box. So if you want to do a hands-on with your own, you can do that. Let's see if our application is not created. It may take up to 15 minutes. Okay, so it is not created yet. Okay, it's created, I think. Okay, so now what I will do, I'll go to my application gateway ingress controller, because we need to add the public IP address of application gateway to our domain provider. So I'll go here my GoDaddy account. So here I'll go to my product, and in the YAML file we have used the journeyofdevops.com domain name. So we have to point the IP address on that particular domain itself. So this is my domain name. So I'll go to manage here. And here I will go to DNS, and here we have to create a record for this. So actually I already have a record. So what I will do, I will just edit it and I'll just change the IP address. Now let's see if is there any space in beginning. Okay, there is no space. So let me save it. Okay, so I think let me copy the IP address again. Enter the valid IP address. Okay. Okay, so I think there was some space in the IP address. So now we have pointed our application gateway ingress controller IP address to our domain name, because here I have used @ so it will automatically take my domain name, which is the journey of devops.com. If I'll browse it, so as of now I will not get any content because nothing we have deployed here. Okay, so let me go to my AKS cluster now. So I'll go to connect here and I will use Azure CLI. So I will using first AZ login command. So let me go to my Visual Studio Code. Let me close this. Okay, let me open the terminal here. So it is basically authenticate with my email account. Okay, let me go back. Now what I will do, I will download the cluster credentials so I can communicate with the AKS cluster, because now we have to install the certificate manager here. Let me go back to my Visual Studio Code. So you can see it's already authenticated because we can see the subscription name, tenant ID and all. So let me clear the screen. Okay, so it's completed. Now let me go back to my presentation here. So here I will install the certificate manager on AKS. So let me first add the Helm repository. So let me copy this command. And this is the next command, which is Helm repo update. Okay, so now let me again clear the screen. Now what next? Now we have to install the certificate manager using Helm. So I'll copy this particular command here. Let me see if I have copied correctly. Okay. So it will take again at least a minute to complete this command. Once we got a certificate manager installed, then we can see the list of pod which is running as part of this certificate manager. So let me copy the command kubectl get pods and the namespace is certificate manager, because here we have specified the namespace name is cert-manager. So in this namespace only it will create a pod for us. Okay, so it's completed. Let me clear the screen. Now we'll verify the pod status here. So if you get all the pod, like we are seeing here 3 pods basically, so and status is running, so it means you have successfully installed the certificate manager on AKS cluster. Now what next step was, we have to configure the ClusterIssuer. So for that I already have created a YAML file here. So let me run this YAML file. So let me clear it. kubectl apply -f and file name. Okay, so this is also completed. So to verify it, we'll run it kubectl get ClusterIssuer command. So you can see the status is ready, true here. Ready is coming true. If it is false, then you have to do a troubleshooting. Maybe something goes wrong. Okay, so this is also completed. Now let me go back to my PPT. Okay, so now we will start the deployment. So let me clear the screen again. kubectl apply -f. Now I will install run this deployment.yaml file. Let's verify the pod. kubectl get pods, not pods, pod. kubectl get pods hyphen actually command was wrong. Let me clear the screen. kubectl get pods. So we have specified one replica set. That's why we are seeing here one application instance is running, a pod instance. If I'll go to deployment YAML, we have defined one replica here. So now next thing what I will do, I will run the service.yaml file, kubectl get, sorry, kubectl apply -f and service.yaml file. So let's check kubectl get services. So we are getting services, it means it's completed successfully. Now next thing we have to install the ingress.yaml file, kubectl get, sorry, apply okay, so let's verify it, kubectl get ingress. Okay, I have missed here again L. Okay, so this is also completed, and you can see the host, the domain name is pointing to the public IP address of Ingress controller hour. So let's quickly verify the application. Okay, so it's using HTTPS. Let's try with HTTP also, because we have not enabled Ingress controller, sorry, SSL certificate yet. Okay, so I think it is again pointing to HTTPS. Okay, now what I will do, let me go back to my Visual Studio code. So here we have run service.yaml file, let's encrypt.cluster. Now the certificate.yaml file is pending. So if I'll clear the screen and I will run kubectl get, sorry, apply -f and our certificate.yaml file. So let's verify kubectl get certificate-a. So error, certificate manager not found. Okay, let me go to my presentation. Here I have added some debug command in case if you see any issues. So let me copy this command. Let's see if we are getting. Okay, I was providing the space here. Okay, so you can see we get the certificate, the name is my TLS-certificate and the status is true, and the secret where this particular certificate is stored, which is TLS-secret name. So now let me go back to my URL. Let me also open in incognito mode. HTTPS : okay, it's already taken. Okay, so we can see the home page of Nginx Ingress controller. It means it's working fine. Let's quickly verify the certificate. You can see the connection is secure, and if we'll go to the certificate, you can see we are getting the certificate name R10 and organization name is Let's Encrypt. It means we have successfully integrated Let's Encrypt with our application. So now it will automatically renew the certificate when it about to expire. So you can see the validity period we have specified 90 days. So it's running January 31st January 2025 today date, and it will expire on 1st May 2025. So if you create a certificate resources from your own, then you have a more control on the certificates. In our case, we have created a manual certificate. In case if you want to create an automatic certificate without creating the certificate resources, then you have to enable the Ingress-Shim on your AKS cluster. Basically not AKS cluster, it's on certificate manager. So for that, I think I have already specified the commands. Let me close this screen. So if you have to verify ki Ingress-Shim is enabled or not, you can simply run this command kubectl. Sorry, it is for enabling but let's verify with the help of this command if the Ingress-Shim is already enabled or not. So let me clear the screen. So we have not received any output. It means the Ingress-Shim is not enabled. If you have to enable it, what you have to do, you have to edit the deployment of certificate manager. And if I'll go here, so you can see it is open a notepad file, and we have to look for the argument section here. So let's see where it is, argument. Okay, specification. Okay, so here basically what you have to do, you have to simply add hyphen controller equal to Ingress-Shim. So it will automatically enable the Shim, because by default it is disabled. But if you want to enable Ingress-Shim to create an automatic certificate based on your Ingress resources, then you can enable it. So I'm not going to enable it because we have already created a certificate resources, but if you want, you can do in this way. So that's all for today. In case if you have any doubt, ping me on comment. Definitely I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. And also I will add these YAML files in a GitHub repo, and I will add a link on the description box. So thank you so much. See you next video.